All right. You all know who we are and why we're here, so without wasting anybody's time, let's jump straight in. And we can dispense with the formalities here. You guys might want to gather around, because I'm going to be referencing the slides a lot here. So the first order of business when we got started was to basically rip the domain class model into Umlet and make this the starting off point. This is where we jumped off and got everything going. So what we have here is basically just the variables from the domain diagram. No methods here except for the use cases, which we know we were going to have to go into later, the main ones. So then step 2 was to generate a list of all the use cases that we might want. A list was already provided in the spec, but we also wanted to go into the sub use cases, like the ones that we might have to go into in order to layer them. So here's a list, or a first list of some of the use cases we might want to include in the diagram here. So all the functionality is represented. And that's what we have here. Still, we have some methods missing, like set and get methods. A lot of the nested use cases are not included here. But we have every use case from the specified scope of the assignment are represented here. Then we noticed some of the problems that immediately came to represent themselves in that we didn't have a user class, so there was no method for actually generating a site report or generating mosquito sites in the system. So we needed a user class, and then we thought, well, user classes shouldn't be able to create themselves, so that's where the idea of a profile controller came in to handle that. And additionally, these labels were pointed out as inappropriate, so we get rid of all of these. Association classes like this, that can't be represented in code, so we had to get rid of that as well. Find another way to implement that. So that's what we have here. This is the first instance of a diagram which could be considered at least appropriate for our purposes, but still had a long way to go. For instance, we've got no persistence mechanism here just as yet to represent the database access. And so that's what Peter's going to talk about right now.
So with the facade pattern, we were unsure about how it was meant to be connected with the diagram. So we looked through some of the examples from the workshops to see how, to get a better understanding of how the facade pattern works with classes, like its relationship and the layout. After getting insight about the facade pattern and having done most of the main classes in the diagram, we went through each class and discussed what objects should be retrieved and stored with the facade pattern. And here, so this is the facade diagram. So the process of creating the diagram, we first created the persistence facade class on its own, and then we started to branch out the important classes, so the data access object interface, and then it required a SQL server session to retrieve and store the data from here. And this is using the Java SQL package. So with this class here, the server class, this is all the main classes that have all the objects which can be retrieved here. After that one was completed, we added the persistence facade class here. So as you can see here, this is connected to all the main objects that play a big role in the diagram. So for example, the area coordinator, the mosquito sites, the reports, the worker and the area, and also the equipment as well. So yeah, all the lines are just connected to here, which is then connected to the package for the persistence facade diagram. And after that, we began doing the interaction diagram and started to learn more about the process of the use cases, which then allowed for more classes and functions to be added to the mosquito tracking system diagram. We then figured out that we needed some functions and classes to be added to that diagram. And also we added an additional controllers and functions so that it adheres to the use case scenarios. So, yeah. So that one is our final diagram with the consistency side and two additional controllers, which is the action controller and the equipment controller. So the controllers are for the area coordinator, so that it allows the area coordinator to control the actions for the area, and also a controller for the equipment to sort out the availability. And for example, we have a function to adhere to the create treatment plan use case. So we've got the verify area coordinator, get sites, and get treatment plan. Furthermore, we added additional functions for the use cases, assign worker and schedule treatment plan. And now I'll bring you over to these guys who will talk about the interaction diagram.
Okay, thanks Peter. Okay, so after finalizing the two main class diagram, we come up with those interaction diagram. And the first one I want to talk about is the create treatment plan, which based on use case create action plan. So here's the primary actor of this use case is the area coordinator, and the precondition to contribute to the success of this use case is that the worker it must has store and update the availability in the system, and also for the treatment plan it must have equipment list and equipment availability, the schedule for the equipment which will be needed later, and also the area coordinator need to be associated with a certain area so the system can keep track and verify them. So the first action between the actor and the system is that the area coordinator will select a certain area, and then the area coordinator acts as a controller in this use case. It will verify to see if the area coordinator is associated, is responsible for that area or not. And then if its return fail, then the system keep asking in a loop. And if return true, it will move on to the next step, which the system will check to see if that area is eligible enough to do the treatment plan or not. So when the controller verify it's true, then we jump to the next step. In this step, it depends on the actor to see if he's one to create treatment plan and assign worker or not. And at this step, it won't be presented detail in the other use case later. But the main success scenario of these two use case is that after finish scheduling treatment action, the action list should be represented. The equipment list also needs to be represented, and the equipment availability should be updated. And also after assigning worker, the system also should have update and notify the worker. After successfully executing these two sub-use case, it now has a final plan, which the user, in this case is the user, in this case area coordinator, can update it to the process of the plan. And he's gonna talk the detail of these two use cases.
Yeah, since Tao, I'm going to introduce two diagrams, which is sequence treatment action, and one is assign worker. As you can see here, this area coordinator finds its area by passing the label to find which area he is associated with, and with the area we get the mosquito size, return the mosquito size to actor. which is area coordinator. And then he scheduled he find get the potential actions which that area could happen, and select one of them. Also, no, sorry, it returns one list of the actions and select one of them. And it may happens that it doesn't return a action list. It may it's a not empty actions. And then he scheduled one trimmer action to the trimmer action class. And since actions needs equipment, that's why we're gonna ask equipment controller to get the equipment list. So we pass in the equipment type as a parameter to ask what kinds of equipment do you got in your storage, and get the equipment list as a return value. Yes, and see what equipment we got, and find the equipment's ID and set the ID as the actions equipments, and set the availability to false, means it's occupied, it's not available. Yeah. That's our assign worker sequence diagram. Basically, like previous happens, you will find you
30
see
seconds left.
how many?
30 seconds.
30 seconds. Yeah, you will find what actions available for that. And once the action available, you will find it was assigned a worker here. But every worker probably need a skill. That's why we get the skills from treatment plan and see what workers has that kind of skill, and assign their skill to the worker. Yes. Yeah, basically, and we ask get to see what's worker's ID and assign the ID to the action. That's how we implement this assign worker sequence diagram. Yeah, that's basically all of them.
Okay, thank you.
Do you guys have any questions?
Questions? No? Did you talk about any patterns that you have?
Yeah.
Design patterns?
Just the facade pattern.
Okay.
The rest of them just kind of came naturally as they want to do.
Yeah.
Okay, so you talked about, how you went from iteration to iteration and so on. Now, looking back, would you do it the same way, or would you change anything? The process, I mean.
Our process for the sequence diagrams could probably have been done better.
Okay,
But the
why?
first time we did those, we developed them completely separately. And we also developed the design class diagram separately as well. So instead of one informing the other,
Right.
neither of them had any connections whatsoever.
Okay.
So editing the diagrams just so they made sense was such a hassle that it ended up making more sense just to start from scratch.
Start from scratch,
Yeah.
the design diagram, and then go.
No, the design
Just
diagram
the-
we kept, the sequence diagrams, our initial ones, completely scrapped those and started again, deriving from the
Yeah.
design class diagram like we should have to begin with.
Right, okay. Any specific lessons learned other than that one? For your design, if you had to work in this domain, did you learn any specific lessons that will be useful in a career of system design?
Probably to go through the use case scenarios more, in depth, and then start doing the diagram maybe.
How did you distribute the work? Did you distribute at all, or did you work?
Oh, we did it all as one, so we discussed everything and then we went on to do it together.
So there was no individual, you go and do it and coming back and discussing?
Maybe just for the slides.
Okay.
Yeah, that's about it.
We did a lot of work together, and then at the end of our meeting, just talk about what we're going to do before we meet again. So it was not, our development process was not unlike a Scrum framework, but kind of slower.
Okay, thank you for the nice presentation.